In the midst of a rainy night, a hunter tries to save his sister but ends up being rescued by a sentinel. This guardian adopts them, making them part of his family. He trains the boy in swordsmanship, and eventually, the boy becomes the demon hunter wielding a legendary sword. In 1830, during the first year of Japan's Edo period, a young girl was mercilessly beaten by her father as her older brother, also a child, could do nothing but watch helplessly. The father dragged the girl by her hair, while she cried out to Jinta, who could only sadly observe the scene. The girl was locked alone in a sort of dark storage room and left there, where only a flower inside the space caught a sliver of light from a hole in the roof. Later, after his sister was released, Jinta went to the storage room during a heavy rain and chased after Suzune when he realized she was no longer there. Upon finding the girl on a bridge, the band covering her right eye had torn, revealing an eerily red and almost inhuman eye. He apologized for his inaction, but Suzune preferred that he remain silent about it to avoid getting beaten himself. Yet, Jinta was tired of the humiliation and decided to run away from home with her right then, with just the clothes on their backs. After some time on the run, the two took shelter in a damaged building to protect themselves from the rain and cold. The older brother was constantly concerned about his younger sister's health and displayed great kindness at all times, while Suzune stayed strong despite the circumstances. Suddenly, at a moment when the boy was almost asleep, a man reached out to them and invited them to stay with him. Jinta awoke the next morning to find himself being carried by the man, who seemed kind-hearted. Suzune appeared happy and recovered from the beating, and upon seeing the boy awake, the adult also helped him to start walking. After a walk, the siblings were led to a small village that, according to the man, was built to house blacksmiths who used large bellows to forge katanas. They arrived at the man's house, where his daughter greeted him joyfully. Jinta firmly held Suzune's hand until the man's daughter asked who they were. The father replied that they were children in need of a home, so they would live with them from that day and become part of the family. Hearing this, his daughter ran to her new friends and introduced herself politely as Shiryuki. Jinta immediately responded with his name, while Suzune took a few seconds due to shyness. From their first interaction, Shiryuki was eager to befriend the two, and her kindness seemed like something from another world to the siblings, who were unsure how to react to such generosity. That night, as the adult cleaned his katana, Jinta couldn't sleep and, watching the scene, decided to ask if Madoharu was a samurai. The man explained that he was a sentinel, whose role was to keep important things and people safe. As he listened, Jinta noticed the gleam and sound of the blade. At dawn, as Suzune continued to sleep, Shiryuki left the house with a bucket in hand. Meanwhile, Jinta seemed to be practicing with an improvised sword by the sounds of it. Later, the girl took the siblings to a river for a bath, where Suzune met a new friend her age who jumped into the water with her, hand in hand. Despite everything these children had endured at the hands of their father, they both strived to live in the moment and seemed increasingly comfortable with the new reality that had fallen into their laps. By late afternoon, the new girl joked that Shiryuki always ate dango all the time and that it would be nice to have some vegetables for a change, but the friend couldn't help it since Chidos's mother always made the best dango. Speaking of which, the woman called her daughter at that moment, so the child said goodbye to her friends and ran to hug her mother and tell her about the great day she had with her classmates. With this image in mind, Jinta asked about Shiryuki's mother, Yokaze. From what he learned, it was Yokaze who had obtained the permission for him and his sister to live in Kadono village, but Jinta had never met this woman, as she only lived in the shrine. About this, the girl explained that it was because her mother was the village Itsukiheim, which is another name for fire god's Miko. Only the village chief and Shiryuki's father, who was the sentinel of the mother, were allowed to see the Itsukiheim. According to the laws of this place, the Itsukiheim could not interact with ordinary people, as this could infect her sacred powers. Indeed, it had been years since Shiryuki had seen her mother. Regrettably, she then called her friends to resume their walk. 2 years later, in 1833, Jinta was training with a sword alongside Madoharu one morning. Despite the smile on his face, the man did not go easy on the boy, knocking him down to show that there was still much to improve, as only practice leads to perfection. Jinta knew this, but he felt as if he hadn't progressed at all, which was the source of his frustration. Hearing this, Madoharu placed his hand on the boy's head and taught him that nothing is forever. Even if you feel the same, believe that you are changing little by little. So the man assured that the boy would become stronger over time. With that, Madoharu ended the training and left to attend to other matters. Then his daughter ran with his katana to hand it to her father. After that, Shiryuki also patted the boy's head to say it was a pity he had lost. But Jinta asked her to cut out the jokes. Shiryuki replied that she just wanted to be a proper older sister, but the boy reminded her that he was older than her, so she argued that she took things more seriously around there, meaning she was the more mature one of the gang. Suddenly, Suzune appeared, wiping her eye after waking up, and for some reason, Jinta was completely embarrassed. Shiryuki seemed to understand the reason. However, she let it go with a smile and called the boy to have coffee with his sister. In the following scene, Jinta is at a sort of meeting years after many events have unfolded. A woman claims that his demon hunting skills have proven impeccable, though he simply believes he is fulfilling his duty as the village sentinel. The mysterious woman inquires about the kind of demon he encountered this time, and Jinta reveals that the creature used a human disguise to enter Kodono unnoticed. This news causes great concern among those present, and one comments that this probably occurred after what happened to the village princess, considering that demons live about 1,000 years, but according to legend, eating the fresh flesh of a miko can make these monsters immortal. Another man points out that there's no evidence this legend is true, but the first reminds him that the previous Itsukihime, Yokazi, was indeed devoured by a demon, and they only managed to end that monster after Madoharu sacrificed his own life. Regarding this, the mysterious woman believes the demons are after Yarai, the sacred sword passed down to the Itsukihime of the village each generation, and the man agrees, considering that Yarai was forged using Kodono's finest techniques and remains flawless even after a century, which undoubtedly attracts the demon's covetousness. Nevertheless, Kiyomasa, the son of the man speaking, believes no one should worry about this. After all, the Itsukihime has 2 sentinels protecting her, even though one of them is a braggart who thinks he's Musashi just because he has a little sword. Obviously, the young man glares at Jinta after this quip, but the veiled woman reminds them that this shrine is no place for baseless squabbles, especially since Kiyomasa himself is a sentinel of the Itsukihime. Thus, Kiyomasa's father declares the meeting over, and everyone departs, but Jinta stays put. Alone with the man, the princess dispenses with formalities and unabashedly reveals her face, as she hates having to act this way every time she meets this old friend. Thus, Jinta calls the woman by her name, Shiryuki. More relaxed, she sits in front of the young man and promises to try not to depend so much on him anymore. But Jinta doesn't understand why, since a sentinel's role is precisely to keep the Itsukihime safe. Grateful and blushing, Shiryuki mentions that Suzune is around today, and invites Jinta to see for himself. Soon, he moves the barrier that isolates the Itsukihime's enclosure to see his younger sister sleeping inside. He fears the girl might be accused of blasphemy for entering a sacred place, but Shiryuki doesn't take it too seriously, especially since the little girl just came to see her brother, who hasn't been home for days because he's always busy hunting demons. Jinta agrees that it's sad, but doesn't think it's a reason to break the rules, so he wakes his sister and greets her with a smile, reminding her that this shrine is off limits to her. By the way, Jinta hears someone approaching, so his sister scurries away through some secret path she knows. Next, a man approaches the door and asks for permission to enter and get a response to the proposal he made to the princess the other day. It's Kiyomasa's father, who asks Jinta to wait outside for a few minutes so he can talk alone with the woman. The sentinel argues that his duty is always to stay close to protect the Itsukihime, but Shiryuki herself dismisses the bodyguard, though not before reminding him that the security of Kodono depends on him, so it is crucial that he stays firm. In the next scene, for a brief moment, we go back years to when they were children at a funeral. On the night of that sad day, Shiryuki told Jinta that she would become the Itsukihime, that she loves this village for which her mother gave her life, and that the right thing to do is to maintain the village's strength, although that means she will no longer be able to see Jinta. Hearing this, Jinta promises to find a way to reach his friend again when this happens, and although he doesn't have what it takes yet, one day he will get there by following in Madoharu's footsteps and becoming able to defeat any demon to become the sentinel and be by Shiryuki's side once more. The girl sheds tears upon hearing this, and they hold hands in a tender gesture. Remembering these moments, Jinta leaves the sanctuary and lets the woman stay with that man. Meanwhile, two demons watch from afar as Suzyun, and the female creature has no doubt that this little girl looks exactly like the one seen before. Later, the two siblings return home. Suzyun sees Jinta idle and asks if he took the day off to relax, and he explains that he was dismissed from the sanctuary until the end of the afternoon. Overjoyed, the little girl runs to hug her brother, cherishing his presence after so long, and her eye bandage falls off, but she fixes it immediately. Observing this moment of peace, Jinta realizes that he has indeed found happiness, and Suzyun shares that all she needs to be happy is to be by her brother's side. In the midst of this, Shiryuki shows up at home brazenly, causing Jinta to lock up once more since the princess is in the middle of the village. Unconcerned, she admits she sneaked out to spend a cool day with the big guy, but only because she got the village chief's permission for just today. Suzyun suggests they have breakfast together like old times, so the three gather for a meal. Soon, as they eat, the atmosphere is peaceful and tranquil, although the girl teases her brother for having prepared such a disgraceful mess for the princess. The man jokes that he's going to smack the little brat, but Shiryuki argues that the big guy isn't capable of laying even a single finger on her. Jinta dislikes this and assures that he can be quite strict if necessary. However, Suzyun retorts that this won't happen in a million years. Anyway, since the guy insists, the little girl offers her forehead for him to hit. But of course, Jinta doesn't have the heart to do it. After coffee, he watches his little sister dancing and comments that she seems in good spirits. Suzyun replies that it couldn't be any other way, since her big brother is going to spend the whole day with the princess, and after all, his happiness is her joy. Amused, the young man affectionately ruffles her hair and sets off for his day out with Itsukiheim, leaving the child to take care of the house. Thus, the two stroll through the village, catching the eye of everyone they pass. No one knew that Shiryuki was Itsukiheim, but the mere fact that Jinta was seen with a beautiful woman was enough to gather the village gossips. The couple arrives at a dango stand where Chidos works, and she asks who the lady accompanying him is, but he simply says she's just a friend. Shiryuki immediately orders 10 dangos, but Jinta reduces the order to 2 and a 500 ml iced lemon yerba mate. As the attendant departs, Shiryuki finds it odd that Chidos doesn't recognize her, but understands that they haven't seen each other in many years. Soon, Chidos returns with the dangos and an extra isobe mochi on the house, since Jinta has always loved this treat since he was a kid. She almost calls the young man big brother, but stops herself just in time and apologizes, although Jinta doesn't mind at all. He then bites into the isobe mochi, savoring the flavor and bringing a smile to the young woman's face, who then leaves the customers in peace. With her departure, Shiryuki remarks that this girl is an emotional roller coaster, a sentiment Jinta understands, considering things have changed between the two, and he could no longer play the role of her older brother after becoming the sentinel. Jinta recalls one of Madoharu's favorite phrases, "Nothing is forever." Madoharu used to teach him lessons like this, and Jinta feels this man continues to guide his steps to this day. Shiryuki listens to these words with a touch of sadness and nostalgia, hoping to honor her parents' memory by keeping Kodono a safe place to live. Later, they go to the lake where Shiryuki told Jinta that she would be Itsukiheim. Jinta shows his happiness with the day they are spending together, a relief for the princess, who feared she was just dragging the man along for another of her selfish whims. Moreover, she brought him here to discuss a certain matter, reminding him that this was where it all started for her. The big news is that the beauty will marry Kiyomasa by the village chief's order, since if the demons are after Itsukiheim, she should seek a successor before ending up like her mother. After all, one day Kiyomasa will be Kodono's great leader, and their marriage will benefit everyone in the village. On the other hand, speaking now as Shiryuki, the woman confesses that she truly loves Jinta and had even thought about living with him elsewhere, but she knew he would never accept it. As for this, Jinta confirms that he would refuse, but not because he does not love this woman, but because he made an oath to protect Byakuya, not Shiryuki. Since childhood, Jinta dedicated his life to the sword because she had the courage to take off the Itsukiheim mantle, and he respects her for that. However, deciding to run away with Shiryuki would mean throwing away all those years of training and be an affront to what his friend represents. Honestly, Jinta could not live with that weight on his shoulders. The woman responds that they are indeed cut from the same cloth, as in the end, they will always prioritize how they live their lives over whom they live them with. Shiryuki decided to be Itsukiheim and could never face Jinta if she just gave up on it now, because if following that path were just a mistake, she could say the same about her feelings for her best friend. For this reason, the girl decides to remain Itsukiheim to keep the truth in her heart, and so the love she feels for Jinta may live on forever. For his part, Jinta will forever be the Miko's sentinel. Meanwhile, Suzune nervously bites her nails as night approaches. After their brief meeting, the couple resumes their routine. In a meeting at the shrine in the late afternoon, Shiryuki notes that 2 demons have been seen in the Forbidden Forest. Considering this, Kiyomasa must stay to protect Kodono, while Jinta will head to the forest and fulfill his duty as sentinel. As the meeting ends, Kiyomasa calls out to Jinta once, but when he doesn't respond, he grabs the man violently to ask what's going through his head after finding out he's going to marry Byakuya. Jinta cynically responds that he is merely satisfied with the princess's happiness and the harmony of the village. However, Kiyomasa knows well that his rival loves his future wife, but Jinta maintains his stance and does not reveal his true feelings, stripping the force from their argument. In the meantime, Jinta faces a different kind of surprise. As soon as he steps into the taboo forest, he nearly gets struck by a blow that, frankly, the assailant thought would catch the sentry off guard. The Japanese man thought the demon would have company, but the monster informs him that his partner is dealing with a problem in Kodono. With that, Jinta engages in hand-to-hand combat and lands a hit on the target's shoulder with his katana, but the tough skin withstands the strike without being pierced. Moreover, although he dodges the counterattack, the sentry's face is slashed by a rebound. Still standing, the human swings his leg to vie for space shoulder to shoulder with the demon, and this maneuver opens up the necessary gap for him to forcefully strike the enemy's arm. This time, the creature's tough skin is not enough, and its limb is severed after relentless insistence from the attacker. Obviously, the demon has another arm, so it uses it to try to strike the opponent, who escapes with some difficulty. With blood flowing like a waterfall from the lost limb, the diabolical beast picks up its fallen arm from the ground and acknowledges that this will be as fun as he imagined. By the way, he comments that demons can live a century, while humans only live a fraction of that. Yet, humans can cheat the prison of time by passing their dreams and techniques onto future generations, which is truly fascinating. Having said that, the demon wants to understand why this human wields this sword, probably to challenge his nature and accumulate power, but to what end? Jinta explains that it is for his people that he cleaves in half all those who threaten the integrity of those he vowed to protect. Meanwhile, the demoness who invaded Suzune's house asks if the girl knows what she is. Suzune knows well that it is a demon, but to her surprise, the creature tells her that they are both actually demons. Without giving explanations, the invader sees the child clutching Jinta's clothes tightly and assumes that her love for her brother is what makes her become human, and that he must be a very loyal defender to make the little girl feel that way. Curiously, Suzune is filled with joy and approaches the demoness to confirm that Jinta is everything to her in this world. Then, the creature kneels to tell her that someone wants to hurt her brother, and that it would be important for Suzune to use her powers to help her in this. Suzune asks what powers these are, and the demoness explains that the child just needs to follow her. After all, demons never lie, so there is no need to worry. Nothing will hurt the little girl. Even so, the girl refuses the proposal, because even though this thing swears not to hurt her, it can still hurt her brother. So, the demoness touches the human's forehead to make her change her mind. This movement provokes a vision in Suzune's mind, and she begins to see Shiryuki and Kiyomasa in a very intimate moment. The scene disgusts the child along with the pressure exerted by this black magic, while the demoness explains that she is capable of sharing the future with others. However, as the child did not believe what she saw, the adult asks her to come and see for herself. Then, finally, Suzune reaches out to the invader. At this point, although Jinta had landed a good blow on the enemy, he does not maintain an advantage in the contest, and the game seems to have turned in favor of his opponent. During a brief pause in the conflict, it is the man's turn to inquire why the demon threatens humans. The monster explains that his race exists to fulfill a purpose, and his purpose is in this place. As much as he wants to do something different from this, it is simply impossible, as one cannot fight against one's own nature. Therefore, Jinta states that he will show no mercy, which the demon believes is the wisest choice. After all, It would not be smart to keep alive an entity capable of devouring other demons to strengthen its muscles to absurd levels. Having said that, the right arm of the monster triples in size, and a mere punch from that powerful limb is capable of tearing off the human's arm. Despite the tragedy, Jinta tries to keep the course of the blow, but the demon bites his blade and breaks it in half. At that moment, fear takes over the man's gaze, but by impulse, he grabs the broken blade in the air and drives it into the chest of his rival, toppling that giant once and for all. With no strength to get up, he states that, despite everything, he fulfilled his destiny, as his companion has the gift of clairvoyance, and she saw 170 years into the future, when a malevolent deity that governs the demons will arrive in Kodono. That is how they discovered that the most promising being of their species lives right in this village. And that is the reason why the defeated demon arrived in this place. At that moment, Jinta realizes that the monster is talking about his sister. But this was just another painful surprise at that instant. In a low blow, the demon uses his severed arm to grab the opponent, while recalling what Jinta said about wielding his sword to protect those he loves. Taking that into account, he wants to know what happens when one of these people no longer deserves that protection. In that case, who will the sentinel cleave in half? Meanwhile, Kiyomasa takes advantage of the moment of tranquility to enjoy time with his future wife, although she is concerned about Jinta in the taboo forest. That said, the man throws in her face that his wife must be worried if Jinta could hear that she is making love with him. Hearing this, Shiryuki remembers when the love of her life said, hand in hand with her, that he would follow the footsteps of Maruharu. With this vision in her head, she cries, but tells her husband that she chose this path for the safety of Kodono. Having said that, she removes her Itsukiheim attire and approaches Kiyomasa slowly, he who backs away thinking his wife acts crazy at times. Still, Shiryuki holds the man's face to kiss him. It was at that moment that the demoness personally proved to Suzune that she was telling the truth, as she was there with the child just to show her that. In the meantime, Jinta gets up from the ground repeating to himself that he is not dead. Looking around, the demon had disappeared, so the man rushes towards home to save his sister. From there, as he spots the village from afar, Kodono was in flames, but this does not stop the sentinel. Suzune questions the princess about what she saw, as she believed Shiryuki loved her brother. While the girl complained that she always did everything to help her friend stay with Jinta, scenes of her brother running through the city emerge. Suzune admits that seeing Shiryuki with another man is the last straw, and the princess acknowledges that the child has always deeply loved her brother to the extent of stunting her own physical and mental growth, all to remain his little sister. In any case, Itsukiheim regrets, but the truth is there's only one person she can become at this moment to maintain the legacy of Kodono, especially since this is the only way to reciprocate Jinta's feelings for her. For her part, Suzune cannot believe those words at all and highlights that Shiryuki took away everything she always wanted, throwing it all away for a bunch of strangers. Inconsolable, the child begins to physically suffer as she sees her life turned upside down, and this suffering causes her to tear off the bandage from her right eye, exposing that demon-possessed organ along with a macabre posture. The princess still tries to justify herself, but the little girl tells her to shut her rotten mouth. The demon takes the opportunity to reinforce that she was right all along, and that Jinta has always been fighting for a woman who threw herself into the arms of another man at the first opportunity. Faced with the facts, the entity advises what would make Suzune feel better, killing Shiryuki. With that said, a dark layer of energy takes over the room and attacks the human couple. Soon, Suzune reveals a grown form of herself, now a demon eager for the death of Itsukiheim with all her being. Kiyomasa rushes to grab the holy sword Yarai, but the more experienced demon expels the sentinel to keep the conflict between the two. By the way, the blow the man received caused the sword to fly to Suzune's feet, and the young girl's mentor argues that Shiryuki would be happy to die by the blade her people so revered. With that, the entity carries the sentinel out and leaves his little girl to handle the princess alone. With a smile on her face, Suzune unsheathes Yarai and is sure this will be fun. At that moment, Jinta finally arrives and embraces his beloved tightly. But the sentinel fails in his main mission of protecting the Itsukiheim, for at the very moment the two embrace, Shiryuki's head detaches from her body. Suzune approaches with the woman's head in her hand and celebrates her brother's return. The scene instantly traumatizes the man, who sees a film in his head of everything he experienced alongside the woman he loves. At the same time, his dear little sister repeatedly stabs Shiryuki's body while laughing. Overcome with hatred and extreme confusion, the sentinel tries to hit Suzune with his sword, but without success. After escaping the strike, Suzune appears to switch between the little girl she always was and the demon she has become. Believing he's facing his sister, Jinta asks why she did this, but Suzune doesn't understand why he's sad. After all, she killed the princess for him. He should be smiling since she was going to marry that other guy. Since it's all resolved, the little girl would love to go home after spending so much energy on this problem. Inconsolable and stuttering, Jinta emphasizes that Suzune betrayed the good people of Kodono who raised them as if they were part of their family, and his sister reached the point of killing Shiryuki. But despite having done that, she only thinks about how tired she is and wants to go home. It was at that moment that the young man realized his little sister was gone. With the memories of the old Suzune in his mind, he suffers from the harsh reality. Almost in a fit of madness, Jinta attacks Suzune again, despite having no conviction about what to do next. Giving up on the act, he lets out a laugh of despair and feels pathetic for watching his life slip through his fingers. However, as his arm undergoes a demonic reaction, the sentinel remembers that there is still something left for him in this world: his hatred for everything and everyone. Suzune panics and tries to explain that she only killed that woman because she thought it was what her brother wanted, but Jinta tells her to shut up. Then, Suzune assumes her brother will abandon her, just like everyone else did. She thought Jinta was different, and that, among all people, he would be the only one who would never leave her side. But if he's not capable of maintaining his loyalty to someone who always loved him above all else, then to hell with the world. With that, Suzune freaks out and shoots wildly around the shrine in an uncontrolled manner. Finally, intending to kill her brother, she drives her hand into his belly, but when she tries to pull it out, it gets stuck. It turns out that, on purpose, Jinta stiffened his muscles to keep his sister under his control, and then he could crush her. As his arm falls towards the girl, the scene of her giving her forehead for her brother to hit emerges, but this time, Jinta hits Suzune with all his strength and without mercy. Not satisfied, the second blow follows, even more powerful than the first. However, the demon that corrupted Suzune had placed itself in front to absorb the impact and save the little girl. With her chest nearly pierced by all that force, the creature smiles as blood drips from her lips, while Suzune heads to the exit of the sanctuary and declares that she hates everything from now on. Therefore, she will simply smash everything that exists in this world into pieces. Peoples, nations, and whatever it is, she will destroy. And Jinta better remember those words, because no matter how much time passes, one day Suzune will return to visit her brother for the last time before the end. With the girl's departure, the senior demon laughs while singing victory, for she has finally fulfilled her purpose. Enraged, Jinta questions how the purpose of this repugnant creature can be a senseless bloodbath. But the entity has no remorse in admitting that it is. By the way, she has seen the future, and in this future, times will change rapidly. Darkness will be illuminated by men, and this light will steal the home of those who live in the shadows, turning demons into nothing more than myths of the old days. Either way, she can die peacefully, for the future of her brothers is secured. Having said that, the demoness vanished like dust in the wind, and rain began to fall on Kodono village. Jinta held Shiryuki's decapitated body, slowly absorbing the harsh reality. After all these years of sweat and promises, his duty as a sentinel ended there, as a true and unavoidable failure. Feeling love for the princess and pain for her loss, the man let out a cry muffled by the rain's intensity. Dawn broke with Kodono in ruins, traumatized. Tying his sandals, Jinta could see his family playing in the yard. The image gnawed at his mind as he left his house, where the village chief was waiting with a greeting. The sentinel took the opportunity to announce that he would leave the village to start his life anew and prepare to face the demon god who would cast his wrath upon the land. The chief asked if he was really going to give in to anger and kill his own sister, suspecting that wasn't what the young man's heart desired. Jinta replied that Suzune was his beloved little sister, but he had also loved Shiryuki, and he couldn't bear the fact that she had been executed without him being able to do anything. At that moment, the man confessed that he was consumed by the malice that spoke through him, advising him to kill Suzune. However, if possible, he wished to find a peaceful way out of this conflict. In response, the chief thought that now that the boy had become a demon, he would only care about the blood dripping from his sword. But it seems there was still a shred of decency in his soul. Be that as it may, the old man handed the young man the yari and asked him to draw it. Jinta complied with the request and was announced by the village chief as the new bearer of the sacred sword, which meant that tradition must be followed, adding the kanji for knight to the sentinel's name. From now on, Jinta would be known as Jinya. The young man thought he was unworthy of such honor, but the leader reminded him that the line of Itsukiheim had ended, so the sword would just gather dust in that shrine, so it was better left with a princess's sentinel. After all, this way she could rest in peace. With that, the chief knelt before the newly named Jinya and asked for forgiveness, as he had always known about the young man's love for Shiryuki. But at the same time, he also knew that Kiyomasa loved her. Although he had said that their marriage was for the good of Kadono, the truth was that he had arranged the marriage to see his son happy. Thus, despite the harsh words he had heard, Jinya consoled the village leader. At the farewell, the chief said that if the sentinel intended to revisit Kadono many moons from now, the least he could do to make amends was to erect a shrine in honor of the new Jinya. This sacred place would be called Jinta Shrine, and although people and their towns do not last as long as demons, there are things we can do in our short lives that surpass the test of time. Soon, before the warrior departed for good, Chitos appeared to say that in her eyes, Jinta was still the same person he had always been. With that, Jinta promised to return soon and asked the girl to save some isobe mochi for him when that time came. On his way to his new journey, he shielded his eyes from the sun that burned them and finally discovered why demons seemed so content to fulfill their purposes. Without revealing his discovery, he reflected that 170 years seemed like quite a long time. He then reached the miko of another shrine. Thinking to herself, the woman pondered that she had never thought events from such a distant past had anything to do with her, but it seemed that the tears on this man's face were directly linked to the reason why she was there at that moment. Soon, this woman would learn about the long journey he had lived over the last 170 years. Check out these videos appearing on your screen and subscribe so you don't miss the next part.